The news article talks in depth about the scarcity of water, and if some techniques aren't adopted, we may have a globally wide problem. The agriculture sector accounts for 70% of this usage. Now, with mining and everyone else accounting for the 30%, the problem that is coming puts the agriculture sector at a loss. With new mining stations and more allocation of the water elsewhere, the 30% is set to increase. With the demand of water increasing in these situations, the scarcity of the water itself will lead to a more importance of the value of water in the future. Have an effect on the water supply in the coming years is climate change. Climate change will decrease the availability of the water source. With higher temperatures comes less evaporation being produced, which then lowers the supply of water. With this shift in supply, water, unless our society creates new ways to adopt, the decrease will cause a potential shortage to farmers for irrigation and cooling purposes in the future years. Changes that can be done seem simple but don't make life easier or cost efficient. A couple of examples of low value uses of irrigation water are when water is used to grow low valued but water intensive crops and when irrigation water never reaches target crops. The agriculture sector can learn how to do more with less water, but irrigation provides higher yields and it helps farmers cope with the arid conditions and high long run temperatures. There may be better solutions for farmers. Farmers can justify their own scarcity value of water for water intensive and low valued crops. They can also consider whether their capital can be substituted for water by implementing more expensive methods. Underlying economics. It is quite evident that an increase in demand for water would shift the demand curve on the left from E0 to E1. This is an increase as water becomes scarcer and the demand for the 70% agriculture sector and the other 30% for the other users increases. With this increase in demand, the quantity will increase at a larger rate as the price slightly increases at a smaller rate. The increase will then be followed by a decrease in supply over the next years. The decrease is represented by the graph on the right, where E0 shifts left to E1. The shift in supply will cause a higher price to be paid by farmers and others for the water which they will be using, and they will be receiving less amounts for that higher price. The supply will decrease as more water is being used and less is being reused by farmers or other users. Culture. So in this table you can see that our main sectors are water and agriculture. The first, the change is to tap new sources. The advantages of this, we increase our supply, but our disadvantages that come from this is only water in abundant regions. Another change is treat wastewater for specific reuses. Advantages, expand effective supply, clean to desired water quality. But the disadvantages from this, vulnerable to toxics that are in the water. Our last point for change is move water from low to high value to uses. Increase aggregate value of water. It increases flexibility of the system and least expensive alternative. The disadvantages of this can have winners and losers and needs institutional reform. Now for the agriculture sector, change as in less irrigated land. Advantage of this would be concentrate water on most fertile farms. But the disadvantages of this, irrigated farms can be high valued. Another change could be switch to high valued crops that use less water. An advantage, increased value of agriculture. Disadvantage of this though, lose specific crops. And finally, the last change for an agriculture, water saving irrigation methods. An advantage of this is grow more irrigated crops on more land. But the disadvantage is it's more expensive and you will lose the low intensity irrigated farms.
With all this said and done, there can be many different implications in agriculture if the water sector were to decrease. The one way it will hurt the farmers is by forcing them to reduce the number of acres they have seeded which are irrigated. Since irrigation produces a much larger yields compared to runoff and rain-fed crops, it can cause an implication because it will drive down the yield of the crops. It can also affect the quality of the grain that they do produce if there is a lack of water during the growing season. This, in turn, will make the farmer less profitable due to the loss of grain and decrease of grade of the grain they sell on the market. The second implication that may happen in the agriculture sector, if the amount of available water for irrigation is reduced, is that it will cause the farmer to use new, different crops. This can be harmful to the producer because the new crops can cost more than the existing ones, which will once again make the farmer less profitable. Both are implications that may be caused if the reduction of available water is reduced within the agriculture sector.